Formula 1 has been a sport about dominance ever since its very first race at Silverstone in 1950. Each era being defined by a team or driver showcasing their dominance in skill, determination, intelligence, and just a little bit of luck. After watching back some footage of Red Bull's RB19, I wanted to find out which car, by statistics, could be considered the most dominant Formula 1 car in history. Welcome back to Trackside Tales, guys, where we dive deep into stories that shape motorsports. Today is going to be a little bit of a different video where I calculate the most dominant Formula 1 car of all time. So to find out which car was the most dominant in history, I had to select some aspects of the sport that can help determine dominance. So for this video, I'll be ranking the cars within these 6 different categories: win ratio, pole positions, points percentage, average gap to the cars behind, reliability throughout the season, and all conditions adaptability. So talking about things like how can the car adapt to each different style of track, how can the car adapt to different weather conditions, and more. And I personally think that these 6 categories can help us just have a little bit of a better understanding as to which car was the most dominant. And when it comes to the competitors of this video, here are the cars that I have personally chosen as the 6 most dominant Formula 1 cars in history. We have the 1988 McLaren, we have the 1992 Williams, the 2004 Ferrari, the 2014 Mercedes, the 2020 Mercedes, and the 2023 Red Bull. And to help determine which car is the most dominant within each category, I will be given a score between 0 and 5, and the car that racks up the most points by the end of the video will be given by me the title of Formula 1's most dominant car. Let's begin by examining the simplest measure of dominance in Formula 1, the win ratio, of course. This represents the percentage of races in a given season won by the team using that specific car. So based on the data that I was able to collect from statsf1.com, which I will leave them in the description below, very fantastic website where you can just take a look at all the different stats throughout the history of Formula 1, we can see that the RB19 in 2023 won 95.45% of all the races that season, winning 21 of the 22 races that season, followed by the 88 McLaren, which won 15 of the 16 races that season, giving it a 93.75% win ratio. And then we move on to 3rd place to round off the podium with Mercedes W05, which won 84.2% of the races that season, winning 16 of the 19 races. I think for me, the main standout in this category is actually the W11, and not in a good way, because the W11 is known as the fastest car in Formula 1 history. However, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas were only able to yield a combined 76.4% of all races won that season, winning only 13 of the 17 races won that season. So when it comes to the category of win ratio, the 2023 Red Bull is the most dominant car in Formula 1, winning 95%. So they're going to score 5 points for this category, followed by the McLaren in 88. And then we have the Mercedes in 2014 scoring 3 points in this category. Then we have the Ferrari with 2 points, the Mercedes of the W11 in 2020 with 1 point, and the Williams in 92 scoring 0 with their lowest win ratio. After looking at the win ratio of each car, it's time to step back a day and take a look at each car's qualifying dominance. Pole position set the stage for race day, so we measured the percentage of race starts from pole position to understand which car is consistently locking out the front of the grid. And the rankings for the pole position percentage is a little bit closer than the win ratio. However, Mercedes W05 in 2014 takes pole position with a 94.7% pole ratio. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg combining for 18 of the 19 pole positions that year. And next up for P2, we have a tie actually with McLaren's 88 and Williams' 92 car scoring a pole position percentage of 93.75, with Nigel Mansell, Riccardo Patrese, Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost combining for 15 of the 16 pole positions respectively for each season. I think personally for me, the most shocking car in this ranking for pole position percentage has to be the RB19, with only a 63.64 pole percentage rate, which means out of the 22 races raced, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez only combined for 14 pole positions. And I think if you take a look at the story that these two categories are kind of telling us here, especially when it comes to the 2023 Red Bull and the 2014 Mercedes, it seems as if Red Bull's car was just one of the more dominant cars in history in terms of its race pace, whereas the Mercedes was more dominant on the Saturday, which kind of benefits Red Bull here, as the points are won on Sunday, of course, and not necessarily on Saturday. Now we move from looking at one aspect of the season to looking at the season as a whole. We have the points percentage. Now this is a metric that shows what fraction of the total points awarded throughout a season was claimed by the team running each car. It accounts for how well a car performed relative to the entire field for that year, not just its closest competitors. And I do want to quickly mention that, of course, Formula 1 has changed their points system and the amount of races raced each season quite a few times over the years. So I've tried my best with this one, but I think I've done a pretty good job. And again, the biggest outlier for me here is Red Bull's 2023 car, with only a 33% of all points gathered that season, with McLaren's 88 car topping the grid with a 49.75% ratio. That is insane to me when I actually think about it. It means that in 1988, McLaren scored almost half of all points that was available that season. And just for those who didn't watch Formula 1 back then, or like myself wasn't born back then, the point system was quite different to how it is now. For example, in today's Formula 1, the top 10 finishers receive points. However, back then, it was only the top 6. And instead of receiving 25 points as the winner back in Formula 1 only received 9 points. Moving down the grid a little bit, we have Ferrari's 2004 car driven by Michael Schumacher, of course. Not really mentioned them much in this video. They've been quite quiet. However, in 2004, the point system was a little bit different compared to today and back in 1988. The top 8 finishers received points back then, with the winner receiving 10 points. There were 39 total points given out each race to the top 8 finishers. With 18 races, that equals 702 total points given out that season. And Ferrari picked up 262 of those points, equaling 37.3% of all the points. With this category, I think it tells a pretty simple story. There's just simply more races and more points available in Formula 1 today than there used to be back in the day, which means naturally the cars that are more recent, like Mercedes W11 or Red Bull's RB19, are going to be lower in the category than cars like the McLaren in '88 or the Williams in 1992. Next up, we have average gaps. Now, average gaps is not an official FIA metric, so I kind of had to work this category a little bit differently to get some decent results here. Now, assessing the average gaps involves estimating how much faster a car was on average compared to its nearest competitors. I looked at things such as the qualifying data, the race pace, and just journalistic references from places such as Stats F1, Motorsports Magazine, Autosports, and even the Formula 1 official website itself. I will leave a link to all of the sources that I used for this video down in the description below. When it comes to the average gaps, McLaren tops out the grid with roughly a 1 second to 1.4 second gap to its nearest competitors, followed by Williams with roughly about a 1 second gap to its nearest competitors back in 1992. A couple of outliers in this category for me was probably Mercedes 2014 car. The fact that it was roughly just under a second quicker to its nearest contemporaries. Kind of a little bit interesting considering that they topped out the pole position category. And Red Bull, the fact that they were so dominant in the race, I think this is just a story that's being told over and over again with each category, as they were only roughly about half a second at best faster than their closest competitors, which in my opinion just kind of shows how good Max Verstappen was in 2023. The fact that the Red Bull car wasn't that much quicker in terms of one lap pace compared to Ferrari, compared to Mercedes and their closest competitors, Max Verstappen was coming out on top more often than not. So it just showed that Max Verstappen was just very, very good in 2023. Now, dominance in Formula 1 isn't just about speed. It isn't just about who can lap the quickest or who can finish the race the quickest. It's also about durability as well, getting to the finish line. Reliability here has been assessed by reviewing some mechanical failures. The fewer mechanical failures or technical DNFs a team experienced throughout the season, the stronger its reliability rating will be. So I essentially determined and ranked the car's reliabilities by using race-by-race data, identifying mechanical DNFs only. Non-mechanical retirements such as crashes, driver errors, or any other external factors unrelated to the car's integrity were not counted towards the car's reliability. And then I took that number of mechanical DNFs and just compared it to the amount of races started throughout that season. So for this category, the RB19 tops the grid with 5 points, basically having no mechanical DNFs throughout that season, followed by Mercedes W11, which had a few more technical failures than Red Bull's, scoring 4 points. And then to round off the podium, we have Ferrari's 2004 car. It seems as if Mercedes 2014 car, while being very good in qualifying, it wasn't as reliable or as quick throughout the race. Which, to be fair, I didn't watch Formula 1 back in 2014, but that kind of came as a little bit of a shock to me. So I'm surprised that they're down in 6th, but yeah, that's where they are in terms of reliability. Now, a truly dominant Formula 1 car can perform consistently at the front, regardless of track layout, altitude, surface conditions, or even the weather. That's why I thought that assessing all conditions adaptability is pretty much essential for figuring out which car is the most dominant. However, this category is a lot more difficult than something like wins ratios because you can't really just look at raw statistics and figure this one out. So once again, I had to sort of work things a little bit differently here. So for the category of all conditions adaptability, I determined each car's ranking based on varied circuits, examining the results from high-speed tracks, street circuits, tight and twisty venues, and unusual circuits added due to unique circumstances such as 2020 and 2023, of course. We also took a look at the weather and track conditions throughout the race and qualifying. I also looked at the era-specific challenges as well, because each car do come from different eras. And then I just took a look at some reliable sources, which again I will leave in the description down below. So based on that, here are the rankings for this category. Red Bull coming out on top once again. Red Bull just seems to be, in my opinion, the most dominant car in the race in terms of race pace and how it performed in the race. In Formula 1 history, it's actually quite insane to think about. Red Bull really were able to create a car that was just an absolute monster, just unstoppable in terms of the race. It wasn't necessarily as quick in terms of one lap pace, as it was pretty much the slowest car relative to its competitors in this category with these cars. However, in terms of its race pace, it's just a level above the rest. Now for me, I think the outlier of this category was definitely Ferrari's 2004 car. Again, I didn't watch Formula 1 back then. I actually started watching Formula 1 in 2019. So, you know, there's a lot of things that I missed, and I'm sure that those who watched in 2004 will probably have a different opinion. But just looking at who was driving the car at the time and just looking at the legacy of the team, it was quite a surprise to see that the Ferrari just wasn't really able to adapt that well to different conditions. They were just really good, I guess, and had, you know, Michael Schumacher, of course. And I can't really leave this category without talking about the W11, as when it comes to all of the cars that I am ranking in this video, I have only seen 2 of these cars race live, and that is the W11 and the RB19. And, you know, going through the 2020 season, yeah, it was quite a weird season, obviously due to COVID, and the Mercedes was just able to adapt really well to everything. I think in terms of adaptability, when it comes to the W11, there's no race that screams its adaptability capabilities more than Istanbul, of course, with Lewis Hamilton, and just his ability to be able to drive the Inters as long as he did and move from Inters to Inters slicks to win his 7th world title. I think that race kind of just sums up not only 2020, but the W11's ability to adapt to any sort of conditions thrown at it. So we've made it through all 6 categories. It's now time to tally up the scores and see which Formula 1 car is the most dominant in history. So to keep the suspension going for the video, of course, I'm going to start with 6th and last place and then move up the order. So in 6th and last place, we have the F2004 from Ferrari, only scoring 11 points throughout the 6 categories. However, moving up into 5th place was a car that, going into this video, I thought was going to be number 1 or number 2 at worst in my opinion, and that is the W11 from Mercedes, the 2020 car, the car that is seen as the quickest car in Formula 1 history. It only actually scored 12 points, just narrowly beating out Ferrari's 2004 car. Now finishing in 4th and just outside of the podium is Mercedes W05 with 14 points. Now to be honest, when I took a look at the list of cars that I was going to be using for this video, and when I just looked at them initially, to be honest, this car kind of ranked pretty much exactly where I thought it would be. So sort of in the middle, not necessarily last, but not necessarily being one of the more dominant cars. So yeah, kind of finishing exactly where I thought it would do. And now we have the podium for the most dominant cars in Formula 1 history. Finishing in 3rd place, we have the Red Bull, the RB19, coming through with 15 points, just narrowly beating the W05. Now this one was kind of unexpected, but at the same time, when going through all of the different categories, it kind of makes sense, to be honest. I feel like, in my opinion, the RB19 is probably the most dominant race car in history. However, it did fall short in quite a few other categories that the other 2 cars were just able to beat it out in. So yeah, for that reason, it finishes in 3rd place. And then in 2nd place with 17 points, we have the 1992 Williams, which means, in my opinion, based on these statistics, based on all the calculations that I've done for this video, McLaren's 88 car with 22 points in the 6 categories, so by far actually when you think about it, is the most dominant car comparative to its competitors for that season in Formula 1 history. I think that the story that is learnt here from this video is that McLaren in 88 kind of just had it all. They had one of the best cars in Formula 1 history, and then they also had one of the best driver pairings in Formula 1 history to drive that car with Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. It was clearly a very insane year for McLaren. So there we have it, guys. I have calculated the most dominant car in Formula 1 history, and as determined by this video, it is the MP4 from McLaren in 1988. I want you guys to let me know in the comment section, which car did you think was going to win at the beginning of the video? And I'd also like to know what your opinions are of these rankings. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you disagree, why do you disagree? And maybe we can have a little bit of a conversation about that in the comment section down below. This was an incredible video to make. I enjoyed making it. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching it. And I'll see you guys in the next video on Trackside Tales.